The year is 1770, and the air in Boston is thick with more than just the North Atlantic fog. History remembers the famous orators, Adams, Hancock, and Otis, but the true spark of the revolution lived in the damp basements of blacksmith shops and the back rooms of dockside taverns. Here we meet Caleb, a free black sailor, and Martha, a widowed printer's apprentice. While the wealthy elite debated taxes on tea, Caleb and Martha represented the thousands whose stakes in independence were far more visceral.
For Caleb, the liberty being discussed was a word that felt like a distant promise. Yet he saw in the growing chaos a chance to demand a seat at the table of humanity. For Martha, the struggle was about the right to own the very press she operated, a right denied to her by both Crown law and colonial custom. The untold story begins not in a marble hall, but in these shadows. The tension in the colonies was a powder keg, and the British redcoats were no longer seen as protectors, but as an occupying force. As the Boston Massacre unfolds, we see it through Martha's eyes, not as a grand political turning point, but as a terrifying moment of sensory overload. The smell of acrid smoke, the screaming of panicked horses, and the realization that the world had irrevocably changed. By 1774, the resistance had moved from disorganized riots to a sophisticated underground intelligence network. We often hear of the Midnight Ride, but the true logistics were handled by the mechanics, a group of artisans who used their daily trade routes to smuggle messages. Martha becomes a crucial link, hiding seditious pamphlets inside shipments of innocuous legal ledgers. This step explores the psychological toll of living a double life. Caleb, using his status as a sailor to move between ports, observes the British naval buildup. He isn't just a laborer, he is an intelligence officer without a uniform. The untold narrative here focuses on the logistics of rebellion. How do you feed an army that doesn't exist yet? How do you manufacture gunpowder in secret when every chimney sweep could be a loyalist informant? The atmosphere is one of profound paranoia. Neighbors look at neighbors with suspicion. In the flickering candlelight of a hidden cellar, we see the first maps of Lexington and Concord being drawn, not by generals, but by men and women whose names would never grace a monument. April 19, 1775. The shot heard round the world is a mythic concept, but for the farmers in the mud, it was a moment of pure, unadulterated chaos. This chapter focuses on the grueling reality of the retreat from Concord. We follow a young teenage boy named Isaac, who has joined the militia not out of a grand sense of patriotism, but because his father's farm was in the path of the British column. The imagery here is visceral. The bright red of the British uniforms against the vibrant spring green of the Massachusetts countryside. The untold element highlights the lack of glory. There are no soaring orchestral swells, only the frantic reloading of muskets and the smell of sulfur. We see the British soldiers not as faceless villains, but as exhausted, terrified young men miles from home, being picked off by snipers they cannot see. By the time the sun sets, the myth of British invincibility is dead, replaced by the grim realization that a long, bloody war has begun.
While history focuses on the signing of the Declaration in Philadelphia's heat, the soul of the revolution was tested in the biting cold of the 1777-1778 winter. We move away from the high-stakes politics to the encampment at Valley Forge. This isn't just a story of starvation. It's a story of multicultural survival. Caleb is now part of the 1st Rhode Island Regiment, one of the few integrated units. Here we witness the arrival of Baron von Steuben, whose harsh Prussian drills turned a ragtag group of survivors into a professional fighting force. But the focus remains on the invisible work, the women like Martha who followed the army, acting as nurses, seamstresses, and cooks. They were the camp followers who kept the Continental Army from dissolving into nothingness. The imagery is monochromatic, whites, grays, and the dark blue of freezing skin, punctuated by the small, glowing orange of campfires, where stories of a future country were shared to keep the hope of warmth alive.
The narrative shifts to the swamplands of the Carolinas in 1780. The war in the North had reached a stalemate, but in the South, it became a brutal, fratricidal civil war. This is the story of the Partisans. We follow a character named Sarah, whose family is split between loyalist and patriot factions. This is the most untold part of the conflict, the guerrilla warfare in the cypress swamps. It was a war of ambushes, scorched earth, and personal vendettas. The imagery is claustrophobic: hanging Spanish moss, murky tea-colored water, and the sudden flash of sabers. We explore the role of the indigenous tribes, specifically the Catawba, who fought alongside the colonists, and the Cherokee, who allied with the British to protect their lands. The American identity was being forged in a crucible of betrayal and survival, far from the polite society of the northern colonies.
As the war dragged on, the Culper spy ring became Washington's secret weapon. This step focuses on the art of deception. We return to Martha, who has moved to occupied New York City. She works as a domestic servant in a house frequented by British officers. This is a high-tension psychological thriller. Martha uses sympathetic stain, invisible ink, to write messages on the margins of laundry lists. We see the mundane turned into the monumental. A clothesline hung in a specific pattern signals a boat crossing Long Island Sound. The imagery focuses on extreme close-ups: the nib of a pen, the flame of a candle revealing hidden words, the beads of sweat on a brow as a British officer glances toward a hidden ledger. This step emphasizes that the war was won as much by information as by lead. In 1781, the tide finally turned, but not through American efforts alone. This chapter highlights the arrival of the French fleet. We see the war through the eyes of a French midshipman aboard the Ville de Paris. The scale of the war suddenly becomes global. The imagery shifts to the grand theater of the Atlantic, towering masts, billowing white sails, and the thunderous roar of broadside cannons. The untold story here is the sheer luck involved, the way the winds shifted just enough to allow the French to blockade the Chesapeake Bay, trapping Cornwallis at Yorktown. We see the meeting of cultures, the polished, aristocratic French officers working alongside the ragged, weary American Continentals. It is a moment of profound realization. Independence required the world's help. The climax of the military conflict. We follow Caleb, Martha, now a messenger, and Isaac as their paths converge on the Virginia Peninsula. The siege is presented as a mechanical, grinding process, the digging of parallels, the nighttime bayonet charges on redoubts 9 and 10. The imagery is explosive, the night sky lit by carcasses, incendiary shells, the rhythmic thud of spades in the earth, and the final eerie silence at falls when the British drummer boy climbs the parapet to signal parley. The surrender isn't a moment of triumph for our characters, it's a moment of profound exhaustion. As the British march out to the tune of "The World Turned Upside Down," we see the faces of the soldiers on both sides, men who have lost years of their lives to a cause they are only just beginning to understand. The war ends, but the untold story concludes with the realization that the struggle for the meaning of America had only just begun. The final step follows our characters in 1783 as the British evacuate New York. Martha finally owns her small printing shop, but she realizes she still cannot vote. Caleb stands on the docks, watching his fellow black soldiers choose between staying in a country that still allowed slavery or leaving for Nova Scotia with the British. Isaac returns to a farm that has been overgrown by weeds and debt. The imagery is hopeful, but bittersweet, a golden sunrise over a battered landscape. The untold story reminds the audience that the revolution wasn't a finished event, but a set of promises made, some kept and many deferred. The final shot is of the Declaration of Independence, not as a dusty parchment, but as a living, breathing, and deeply contested blueprint for the future. If you liked the video, please like, share, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel to get new videos like this. Thank you.